Good evening. Looking to open the Ordinance Committee meeting on June 5th, 5:35 p.m. With me today at Council Chambers, part of the Ordinance Committee, I have Councilor Jenny Rivera, Councilor Meg McGrath-Smith, Councilors Linda Vacan and Councilor Bartley could not be with us as they are attending a Western Mass Hall of Fame inductee for our former Mayor Terry Murphy. Congratulations to Terry Murphy. Also with us in Council Chambers, we have Madam President Tessa Murphy Ramboletti, Senorita Patty Devine, and and we have Mayor Garcia, as well as our awesome treasurer, Rory, and Kevin's online, yes. I just haven't gotten to the online participants yet. Also have our HR department head, Kelly Curran. No relation to Curran Construction. No. And then online we have Councilor Kevin Jourdain. Appreciate you being with us. And then we have from the school department, Mr. Sean Mongano. And if I pronounce your name wrong, please correct me, Sean. We also have Attorney Bissonette, who seems to be silent the last few days. But it's a pleasure, and entertain a motion to take up item 4 first, so that we don't waste Mr. Sean Mongano's time, so that he can present.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So item 4 was filed by Councilor Jourdain Vacan, order that the City Council adopt attached substitute municipal modernization ordinance. And Sean, since you're here, I want to make sure that you have the time to do your thing. So please take the time, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I was just going to speak a little bit to the new processes that have been put in place this year as part of the transition back to local control, just to make sure everyone's aware. And then if there's any other questions or anything anybody wants to know about the school's sort of financial structure, how we operate, I'm happy to go into that. So the school committee they have been following a capacity building plan as part of the return to local control. As part of that capacity building plan, we've been reinstituting a number of financial actions that typically fall under the purview of the school committee. So one, for example, that we are doing this year is we're doing bi-monthly budget reports with the Finance and Operations subcommittee of the school committee. At that meeting, we review our budget, spending, where things are at, and we talk about any other things going on in the district at the time. They are also reviewing budget transfers now. So when the school, if a budget transfer is needed, we bring it to the school committee. They refer it to the subcommittee. There's discussion and a recommendation made at the subcommittee level, and then it comes back to the full committee for approval. We've started presenting gift grants and donations as well. We've been reporting on them bi-monthly. Starting July 1st, we'll be bringing those to the school committee for actual approval before they're accepted. But we start a process of at least reporting on them. And what else? The approval of the budget this year went through the school committee. So in prior years, the school committee voted basically to accept the budget. This year, they actually voted to adopt the budget. So they've taken that control back. They are also involved in the approval of warrants. So they hadn't prior to about halfway through this past year, but we have brought them back. The school committee is back involved in approving warrants. So before it goes to the city auditor or the mayor, there's a school committee representative, the chair of the finance committee, who is reviewing the warrants and approving them, consistent with the policy of the school committee that has one member of the finance committee sign off on warrants. So we've incorporated that, and that's been working really well. So a bunch of financial procedures, again, are in place now with the school committee. As part of the transition, we've been going through all the policies of the school district, and I've been looking at the financial ones, but the school committee is reviewing all of their policies, and I suspect there will be updates to them and some new ones that go into effect as of July 1st. We internally are reviewing all of our procedures to make sure we are properly shifting our practices to local control. Obviously, it's different under receivership where things could be approved in a different fashion, but we're making sure all of our processes are in place so that we are fully, under local control as of July 1st. So, for example, field trips, staff travel, out of state, those types of things have to go to school committee for approval before they can be acted upon. And so we're building our processes to make sure we get that information to them well in advance so they can approve it or act on it. So I would say from kind of where we are at in terms of the shift back to local control, from the financial lens, the school committee is doing everything they need to do, and it'll begin for real in about 4 weeks.
Thank you. Just to be clear, it sounds like the school committee has a lot of work cut out for them now.
Yeah, so we're just reviewing the policies alone is a lot of work, right? There's lots of school committee policies. So they're working through all of them. But yeah, they have a lot of work. They've been doing a lot of work really since sort of the announcement of return to local control. They've been doing a lot of extra steps to prepare.
Awesome. And that all aligns with some of the stuff in the modernization, I can't even say the word right, ordinance, just to keep it all in line with everything else. And if anything, Rory, feel free to tap into as well. Any other questions from anybody on the committee? Any questions from anyone online or any other counselors that are present?
Kevin.
Counselor Jordan?
Yes, hi, Mr. Chairman, how are you today? Wanted to understand, I saw we had received a communication about 2:33 this afternoon, giving us the chart of positions that are under Sean, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I also have some other questions that I wanted to ask. So, Sean, in terms of direct sort of finance or finance-related positions, it appears there's about 8 or 9 positions that you have that would be between the columns called budgeting and accounting and grants. Mm-hmm. You also have an executive assistant, then there's yourself. It looks like about 9 jobs there.
Yeah, so we have 3 manager positions, which an accounting manager, a grants manager, and a budget manager. The budget manager supervises 2 accounts payable positions and then 2 analyst positions. So there's 7 there total. And then there's an executive assistant that is shared with my department and another department. So she's about half time in the finance office.
Good. Sean, when we think about net school spending, these 9 positions, are those part of net school spending, or are they not part of net school spending?
Yeah, those are all within net school spending. Yeah, so everything, all of the central office is within net school spending, except for anything that's directly related to transportation.
All right. One of the things that we're looking at is, harmonizing, instead of running this like 2 different cities, we're thinking about how do we centralize this under one centralized business office? And would that make the most sense? Because then we could have some economies of scale. One of the things that it would seem to me is that we would want to have some harmony between this new CAFO position and what you guys are doing over there. I mean, obviously you're the biggest department overall in terms of total spending. Is that a scenario that, I don't know, have you followed the discussion that's been going on? Have you been privy to any of these discussions around CAFO that have been in here? I mean, in the draft proposal, it certainly looks like from the Springfield model, that was the original draft, and then in the draft that myself and Counselor Bacon had reviewed, school departments littered throughout the documents. And so the question is, has anybody sat with you yet and kind of see like how this could work with school department being part?
Yeah, I reviewed it and had the opportunity to talk with the legal department and the mayor and other city officials. So I've given them some of my feedback. There were some things in there that I'm a little concerned about. Just we need to make sure everything in there is legal relative to what school committee's sort of legal purview is versus what's not under their purview. And there's some things in there that the school committee may be able to opt into, but I don't know if it could be sort of imposed upon the school committee. Things like there was something there on budget transfers, for example, and it's sort of how you interpret different sections. It was sort of broadly mentioned budget transfers, so I don't know if it was speaking to just, if it was a transfer between the school department and the police department, or if it meant all budget transfers, including those that are within the school department's budget. But things like budget transfers within the school department's budget would fall under the school committee. So there's some things like that throughout the document that I think we'd want to definitely look at closely to make sure that it complies, with just Mass General laws and make sure that the school committee is comfortable with everything.
Do you think it would make sense ultimately to merge these? What's your opinion?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think right now we have a very good working relationship with the city. We're pretty much aligned with everything we do, whether it's collection of revenues or procurement or purchasing. We have really strong procedures right now. I've been, really grateful to Rory and Tanya that a lot of ideas that we've had around streamlining things but also making them, improving internal controls at the same time. They've been really open to and have been really good partners. So we have a really good working relationship right now. We meet monthly as all the finance teams, the two finance teams come together and discuss any issues that we have and work things out. I think this has been brought up. The one thing I do long-term really think we need to merge is the accounting systems. That does create a lot of redundant work, more so for the city, but it does create other challenges when there's two different accounting systems and there can be a lag in the data that's in one before it gets into the other one and so on. So that would be, if I was to pick priorities, that would be my highest priority, is to get to a place where we're on one accounting system. I think at that point, then it's much easier to have these other conversations.
Are you referring to Munis?
Yeah, Eunice, yeah.
So, and are we paying for two different systems?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the cost associated with your use of Munis per year?
It's the same as, roughly the same as the city. So there's no difference in, it's based on what programs you use. So we may have a little bit less expensive of a bill because we may not use all the same programs, but it's still, it's about $100,000 a year.
I guess, like I said, you've got a number of positions in here: budget manager, accounting manager. You wonder if there is some economies of scale here with all these different jobs. And, if we added in a couple jobs in for the city side to have this as one centralized office, there might be some overlap that could potentially save us some money. It certainly feels like that would be the case.
Yeah, I'm open to obviously any conversations, with the city. The school department's budget is complex. We have 12 different schools that all have their own budgets. Like the analyst positions that are on there, for example, those are, while they're in my office, their primary role is supporting the schools. We do our best to try to lessen the burden on the schools to have to deal with things like contracts and purchasing and things like that. So those analysts are all assigned to schools and they support the main offices in getting them the supplies and materials that they need. We really have sort of one budget manager that, oversees all the budget transfers, all of the purchase orders again. So that budget manager also oversees purchasing for a $130 million budget. So, but again, we're open to any conversations or looking at anything, but I can promise you they're all working really hard.
Question, are you familiar with the state law that allows us to merge the two finance departments? And do you have any, or are you aware of any communities that have merged sort of general city financial departments with the school department financial departments that we
I'm
could take
not,
a look at?
yeah. I can certainly gather that information if it would be helpful. I'm not familiar, I haven't looked at that law specifically, and I'm not familiar with any, I'm trying to think of school districts I know, ones that have finance. I'm not familiar with any that have a shared like finance director. I'm aware of other school districts that might share a payroll department or share a different department. Like Belchertown, for example, where I'm from, I think they share a payroll department. So I'm aware of different functions being shared. I haven't come across one, not to say that doesn't exist, where sort of the whole function is shared. But again, happy to do some research or reach out to my listserv if that's helpful.
Thank you. I'd appreciate if you would do that. And, there's a couple other positions that I saw in the senior leadership of the school department that I thought seemed duplicative to what the city's doing, which is, we have a chief human resources officer in Beth Gage for the schools. Why do we have two for the city? We have an executive director of technology and data systems for the schools. And now I think we've decided we're not going to do the IT just yet, but like that role seems to already exist under the schools. So how many IT directors does the city need, So there's some synergies here that I think the city needs to seriously consider. These are pretty heavily compensated positions, and I think there's some obvious scale here. So, but thank you for coming, Sean. Again, saw the school department as an integral part of this proposal, and I thought you were an obvious person not here yet. And so I wanted to make sure you were brought to the table in a more public way. And I wanted to have an opportunity to, ask these questions. So I do, as always, appreciate your responsiveness. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate being brought in.
Thank you. Any other questions for Sean? Seeing none. Thank you, Sean, for coming in. Appreciate
Thank you
the
all.
knowledge and sharing, and you're off the hook for the rest of the night.
Thank you, Sean.
So back to item 4. There's still some business to be done, is my understanding, with item 4, particularly around changing some or amending some of the language.
Do we want to start with the school department ones from Lisa?
Sure.
Just since we're on the topic already.
Your mic is on, right?
Yes.
Go ahead. You can take the lead, Meg.
Sure. So we have one set of edits from Lisa, one from Kevin. So the one from our city solicitor, Lisa Ball, has a bunch related initially around the school department. And so there's a number of requests here underneath 291. It says we should delete the language for school department and school committee and delete the reference to the school department. And then under 292, it says there's a paragraph that makes reference to, that's CAFO specifically. But there's under 292C, it says delete school committee. And for 8, remove reference to schools. And then same thing, other place in 292, remove reference to school department. So I'm wondering if it makes sense for us to do that, what we think about doing that. It seems that's the advice that we are receiving, but I wonder what the will of the body is on it.
So before, I want to open it up to the committee first. If there's any questions with regards to anything of any of the amendments or the edits that have been proposed to the city by the city solicitor, Lisa Ball. And then if I hear no one on the committee, I'll open it up to other counselors that are either online or in person. And I don't see anyone in person raising their hand. And Counselor Jordan, just in case, feel free to chime in too.
Well, I think it might be helpful if we just kind of walk through them. Again, mindful that we only got these at 3:12 in the afternoon. I looked at them about 4:30, just so
Yeah.
you're aware. So I think I get it. Where I think Lisa's going with this is to say, if we're going to do IT in a phase two, if we're going to do the school department in a phase two, then some of these references should come out. And if that's what we're doing, then I think that makes a lot of sense. But maybe we should just walk through the different points we would be making these deletions to make sure that makes sense.
So on page 1, 2, 3, underneath 5, composition of financial activities. The suggestion is under, one more page. Go to E in that section. Oh, which I think because of some strike-throughs that our assistant has done, has now become C. Their suggestion is where it says all city departments, employees, officials, boards, commissions, agencies, and other units of city government, including the school committee. It says delete school committee and school department and school committee. This would now be C. I know it says E in their document, but I think with the new strike-throughs, this is the correct section.
And that's on what page, please?
1, 2, 3, 4.
4?
Yep. Under the former E, which is now C.
Where it says all city department employees, official boards, commissions, agencies, and other units of city government, including a school department, shall cooperate with the CAF on the performance.
We still want the school department, do we still want the school department to cooperate with the CAFO?
That is the understanding for the most part.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a question around, I know Mike Bissonnette is here, if through the chair to the solicitor, if Mr. Bissonnette could explain why that recommendation has been made there? Because it does sound like we would want the school department to still cooperate with the CAFO.
Rory's smiling, so I feel like he might have an answer too as well. So we can do Rory, and then we can do, let's do Bissonnette first, and then we'll do Rory.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Yeah. I don't think the issue with having school department responding to CAFO inquiries, but my question is, where does the authority come from to compel?
Because it says
So I
shall.
think that's, that's the problem, yeah. Again, our position is this is really not an area we want to get into on the go-round of creating a finance department. This has been in the works for 20 years, and there are areas that have not really been fully addressed by DOR or even internally. So I think that's the hesitancy here to make too expansive a move just as schools are coming back. But to merely respond, to be required to respond, is just like any other department under the purview of the mayor. So it may be a distinction without a difference, but it certainly seems to me that there is authority in the charter for the mayor to compel any department. So we may want to take a look at that, but certainly the executive has the authority. I'm not sure that under this ordinance, the CAFO would. So just some initial thoughts on why we may be hesitant about putting that in.
Solicitor, does that mean that even though the law department is advising that we don't say that the CAFO has that capacity, that effectively the mayor, through the CAFO, still has that power?
That's correct. Mayor can direct the CAFO to compel any of the executive departments or any of the department heads. In
Thank you.
fact, as a matter of the charter, the city council can also compel the appearance, should that be required.
Well, wouldn't that same logic be true of everything else in that list? You know, because we could just say, you know, under the authority of the mayor, you know, the CAFO could, etc. Because that's true of any department. Like, it doesn't really say anywhere where the authority is coming from in this document. The assumption would have to be for everything in that list that it's the mayor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absent a change in the charter, the mayor is the executive. This merely sort of, well, I think we sort of had this off the record discussion, but it's almost you know, city manager, deputy city manager situation.
I understand. I'm just having a hard time applying the logic to one and not the other when it's true of all of it. Like if the CAFO, you know, doesn't have the authority to compel the school department, they equally don't have the capacity to compel any other city department. And so saying we can't have the school department in there because the mayor is the one that has the authority to compel, well, that's the same argument for anything else.
Point well taken.
Rory?
Yeah, I was going to say this one's actually pretty simple. It should stay, in my opinion. I think a lot of these other changes, you know, and you kind of go through, and if we're going to push a lot of the school department stuff, we should go through this and review each one. But just from a day-to-day practical standpoint, whether we want to cite the city charter, we want to cite various sections of state law, and even what Sean Mangano himself just said, that yes, the school committee is taking on new authority, right, that it hasn't had in a number of years. We're all very excited about that. Mm-hmm. The what's happening at Suffolk Street's changing, but what isn't changing, no matter what, is that relationship between the city's finances and the school's finances. And there is not, in its simplest and nothing, no ordinance will change this. This is state law. There's not $1 that is taken in and not $1 that is expended on behalf of the school department that doesn't flow through the city, both through the treasurer's office and the auditor's office. And as we're thinking about a centralized finance operation, this is pretty friendly language, right? We're just saying that all city departments, employees, officials, boards, commissions, agencies, and other units of city government, including the school department, shall cooperate with the CAFO in performance of his or her duties under this article. It's just talking about cooperation. And to Solicitor Bissonette's point, you know, some of the language about furnishing reports, all those things, they're mandated to do that already. I think what this is just saying is that it's delineating that responsibility, that the CAFO will be working with these departments, and in turn these departments will be working with the CAFO to further those goals. So I think this is a pretty innocent but important area where the school department should remain. That's my opinion, just dealing with this. And I think by keeping this here, there are some other areas as you go through this that it will have to be removed or should be removed. In those areas, you know, that speaks more to the earlier conversation about that state law. And really, to Councilor Jourdain's point, which is extremely well taken, that there are areas where we should be looking for efficiencies and building it in. But the first step to get there is merging our two accounting systems, which is already underway. But it's going to take probably 12 to 18 months to execute that from a true standpoint. But while that's happening, this phase 2 conversation can also be happening. So hopefully that clears it up, at least for this particular point.
Mm-hmm. Well, continuing that same vein then, for the next suggestion for removal is where it says including the school department in the next paragraph down. So it says, for the purposes of this article, the phrase financial activities shall mean all duties, responsibilities, tasks, jobs, or unemployment positions within or assigned to any city department, board, commission, agency, or other unit of city government, including the school department, which substantially involve one or more of the following: accounting, auditing, billing, borrowing or leasing, budgeting, collecting, data processing, payroll, and payments. So wondering why we're suggesting we take that out. Because I would think that if we're saying that the mayor's hoping to have the CAFO have oversight capacity over the school department's financial activities, then we would need to state it there in order to be able to do any of those things. I mean, in many ways, it is very much it's a listing out of what we mean by the earlier paragraph, where it says, we want them to cooperate. Here are the activities in which we might be asking them to cooperate. Like the two seem to be in relationship with each other.
Well, and again, I'll just jump in real quick. I mean, everybody on this council knows, this body, if you're going to build a new school, which board does it come to for authorization? Who's submitting that? It's the mayor submitting that request to the council, right? Debt was mentioned. Payroll was mentioned. Not one payroll warrant is signed off on, not one payroll dollar is expended, whether it be from the school department or the city, any departments of the city, without the mayor's signature countersigned by the auditor. Those things aren't going to change. So, So I think going through it line by line, but I think we're going to see a theme where there's these areas where it should remain, but then those other areas where it's not, maybe shouldn't or should be removed.
Yeah, well, at least for the first three,
Yeah.
I see valid arguments for keeping them.
Yeah.
When you take them out, if you take them out, it's still the same.
If
though.
you take it out, it's not going to change
Yeah.
anything, but, by leaving it in, it just clearly,
Because
like I said, delineates that
yeah,
responsibility.
that's what I was gonna say. Because regardless whether you leave it in or leave it out, the mayor has the end all be all. It's just identifying different roles and kind of putting it out there.
The next one is on page 5, at the top of the first paragraph there, and it's where it says school committee at the very end there of that paragraph.
Where do you see the numbers on the pages?
I added them because it was driving me crazy.
I'm feeling like you're saying
Sorry.
page 5. I'm like, where?
I just, yeah, it was the lack of page numbers was bothering me, so I wrote in my own page numbers.
1, 2,
The next page.
5. Okay.
From where you are if you're on page 4. So it says the word official shall not be construed to mean the mayor or the members of the city council or school committee.
And you're referencing on this page, the Lisa page.
At the very top of that next page.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Go ahead, Kev.
could I make a friendly suggestion that perhaps the law department with Rory kind of go through all these school department edits and put them, kind of go through them and put them where they think is appropriate and leave them where they think it makes sense. And maybe it's through the mayor or, just tweak that language so we can actually see. So this way, we don't right now have to maybe go through every single line of one of these, and then we just sort of take it from there. As I'm thinking about this, I'd like them to have a chance to kind of walk through what should stay and what should go on that, because otherwise, that could get pretty tedious, and that's the next page of edits in Lisa's email.
Appreciate that suggestion. I'm totally with that. So with that said, Mike and Rory, you guys can take it away. Go ahead, Council.
How about if we try to get a draft to you by the 17th?
Well,
16th, actually.
Enough draft.
Councilor Murphy Ramboletti.
no, I'm hoping we can back up a few steps here and not put the cart before the horse. I think, yes, it makes sense to have the treasurer and the law department go through and because this document between the first one, the original one that we submitted, and then the edits from Counselor Jordan and Bacon's order that we have, which is number 4. There's definitely like a lot of changes that we've all made, and being able to see them would be great. I just I think that I would like to see what a realistic time frame is so that we could see a version after talking tonight, see what a version looks like that is updated with a lot of these changes, even if certain sections are highlighted for us to show that. But I think if we could, I think there's obviously still things that we want to go through here. So I wanted to make sure that we all have enough time to see what a more finalized version looks like.
Rory,
Yeah,
go ahead.
if I think that's a great idea, Madam President, and thank you, Councilor Jordan. Obviously, not just myself, the mayor and others would be part of this conversation with the law department. But what I've seen this body do before, and I'm sure Councilor Jordan will remember because it was actually a request of his when it related to the. It had to do with CAFO, in fact, and it had to do with the Financial Policies and Procedures Manual, where there was a lot of that kind of cleanup work that had to happen, but rather than take up an entire subcommittee's evening to go line by line, the committee kind of did the high-level stuff, gave instructions to the law department and said, we're going to report this out, but put it into legal form and get it back to us. I think that realistic, so the full council can review it before it would ever be voted on. I think if we were to take a similar approach, I do think there are some things that still need to be discussed this evening. But if we were going to take a similar approach, especially as it relates to this kind of school department piece, and to clean up the versions that were just discussed, if you were to do that, I imagine, and I believe Solicitor Ball mentioned this at a meeting earlier, that they feel very confident that if this were to be reported out this evening, that the law department would be able to provide legal form to the council by next Tuesday, which would give an entire week before any vote would be asked. And hopefully that would be enough time for that to take place.
So can we focus on the things that you feel that we should talk about then now that need to be hashed out?
Sure, I don't know if that works for the committee and works for the council, that kind of approach.
I mean, the committee, Councilor Jordan, I see your hand raised. The committee and the council are the same, but not the same, right? So the committee can have an approach, and the council might feel a little different about the approach. I'd entertain what the committee would want to do now. And then moving forward, we can talk about what the council would like to do after the fact. But Councilor Jordan.
Right. Mr. Chairman, I limited my thoughts strictly to the school department piece. Yes, we definitely have other stuff we need to talk about tonight, for sure. But there's so many instances of where school committee, school department, superintendent, like all these school language, like that's got to get into, like, they need to put that in writing and make those edits. Some of them they'll keep, most of them maybe they get rid of, but I think you could kill 2 hours going through that line by line by the room here tonight. And I think we should respectfully move on to the other items, which are, a fair amount in their own right.
All right. Councilor McGrath-Smith.
There's a few other pieces in the recommendation from the law department I wonder if folks want to talk about. There's a recommendation around slightly shifting the language around the CAFO's role in personnel and tying it specifically to the expenditure of funds. And then there's a conversation around adding information around the parliamentarian and outside auditing firms or legal counsel. I wonder if we want to tackle those two, as well as on the third page where they talk about some possible language around if the mayor and the CAFO cannot agree. Those are all new to me, and I'm wondering if we could talk those out just to see, does that have widespread support from the council?
So again, the council's a different topic than the committee right now, right? So it's, what I would say is what we're talking about here obviously is going to get reported out and be gone to the larger committee. But if we're going to hopefully try to get what they're weighing in on, they're not all here right now to kind of get that information, right? So whatever we talk about would be amongst whoever is present at the moment. And hopefully with a week's time, they'd be able to go through the paperwork, ask questions that need to be asked, and if at the full council people don't feel comfortable, then it can be have that conversation. Councilor Jordan, I see your hand up again.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Like I think Councilor Bacon wanted to talk about, do we have to have another person for comptroller? I know she couldn't be here tonight. I think there was some discussion about maybe the assistant auditor is going to be might move into that. So it's not a net of 2 new jobs, it's 1 job or something like that. I would not do justice to her points. But I also had an email with my proposal in it. I wanted to modify section 39 of the charter. There's a couple sentences there relative to the law department that I wanted to make it more consistent with what we do with the other departments. So I'd like to talk about that. I also wanted to talk about in 2 let's see here. It's the language relative to, sure I don't misquote. It's that section J language that we talked about relative to the collective bargaining council. I think we've come up with a pretty good compromise on that. Yeah, here it is. It's 2-292J.
Correct, yep.
Yeah.
So I'll let Mike speak for Lisa more than myself, but it sounded like she was pretty warm to that language. The only word in there that I would change, let's see here, is, it's actually K in this one. Is in the last sentence, instead of the word financial transfer, just changing that word to appropriation. But other than that, I think, and I'll let Mike weigh in so I do it justice, but I think she was comfortable with this language. And now in light of the school department changes, I think that would explain the exclusion of the school department unions in sentence 1. So, and then the other one I had that was related to that was a change in 2-156, which would be to add back the labor relations and employment attorney to the law department, but with the addition of the role that, let's see here, it would be, this one here, yep. So
Kevin's going through this.
we would add this position, item 2 would go back in, so that would be maintained. But there'd be a new sentence at the end which would say the mayor and the CAFO shall both approve of any attorney assigned to any collective bargaining negotiation, to make it consistent with that other section. So, yeah.
Yes. And just to be clear, Jeff, we're making the edits as we're going, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Can I I respond?
Yes.
So whenever you want to have me go through my ones, I'm happy to, Mr. Chairman, but I don't want to skip ahead.
No worries. Let Meg respond, and then we'll go through yours.
I didn't see any issue with that bolded line being added to 2-156. I don't know if the law department or the mayor wants to weigh in on that, but adding that line, the mayor and the CAFO shall both approve of any attorney assigned to any collective bargaining negotiation. Is that something that's fine with the law department and the mayor?
From the standpoint of the law department, it's perfectly acceptable. Rare would be the case, I think, where a recommendation from the solicitor wouldn't be honored, but if there were circumstances, again, mayor under the charter, CAFO, also under this ordinance would have the authority to say no.
Are you saying that despite us putting this language in, because in the charter of, the CAFO currently doesn't exist, the power comes from the mayor, that ultimately the mayor would still get the ability to approve the attorney, not the CAFO? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the CAFO doesn't exist under the charter.
Yeah.
So any authority that the CAFO has derives from the executive's authority and subject to the ordinance for the finance department. So that's where we are.
Can I ask a quick
And what you
clarifying?
want to do, what you're trying to do here is say we want whoever the solicitor decides should participate in collective bargaining negotiations on the city side, he or she, they shall propose, and the mayor and the CAFO both must agree.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Rory?
Yeah, and I think I just had a clarifying question, Attorney Bissonette, because I know that my understanding is the language that was discussed at the last meeting and amended that came from the solicitor's office and is part of J or K or whatever we just
J.
discussed. Essentially, I believe what Councilor Jourdain is suggesting gets added into this section just creates harmony between those two. And that's certainly, if that is the case, I don't see why that's an issue. Because ultimately, if the mayor and the CAFO are going to come together to set the table, as it were, for collective bargaining, and who will be representing management, including the solicitor's office, labor attorneys, if there's a separate labor attorney, that the mayor and the CAFO would ultimately be the ones, if there was an issue, to say, we're going to go in a different direction. And that is just creating harmony between the two sections of ordinance. Does that make sense, Attorney Bissonette?
Yes, I think that's right on point, Rory. Thank you.
Okay. I'm comfortable with the language. I think it's a nice nod to the independence of the CAFO, which I appreciate. And then through the chair to Councilor Jourdain, earlier, the section where you have a charter proposal, I don't know if we want to talk about that here or if we want to take that up when we take this up in charter and rules
Yeah, that would be for charter.
next week. So I definitely want to talk about that. And I know that we're looking at if we have to change the date to make sure that everyone can be there.
I'll leave it up to the chairman, but this I see as part of this package because what we're essentially doing is modifying the first two sentences of the charter so that we can effectively, the mayor and the council, set the duties of the law department by ordinance. And what I'm a little concerned is this somewhat antiquated couple sentences here, which seem to put a lot of guardrails on what the mayor and the city council can do by ordinance relative to the law department. And it's been a problem for some time. So here we're talking about what the law department will do and not do. And we do this for every department. Every department's duties are established by ordinance, more or less. It's, personnel does this and treasurer does that. And that's why I wanted to clean that up, to just say that the duties of the law department will be set by ordinance. So, yeah, I mean, we can take it up. I don't actually have a separate proposal in charter and rules on this. I included this edit as part of this package.
Right.
Although this package is the same package, same motion that can be taken up in both committees. I'm happy to talk
Correct.
about it here. I just think because it's so specific to charter, we may want to. Because this meeting, we decided to just focus on ordinance, and that's why we split the last two meetings, ordinance and charter and rules, so we could just get specific to those two places.
Okay. Whatever you want to do is fine.
Okay. Can we go to the idea of the parliamentarian? Is that possible?
Oh, give me 1 second. Kev, you still want to go through your stuff first?
Yeah, I think I'm good on that. I think all of those are good. Yeah, I wanted to talk about, obviously, we're gonna have to make up some language, but yeah, I think that would be a nice segue to get into.
All right, perfect.
Yep.
Sure, we can go to the parliamentarian piece.
So the language we have from Solicitor Ball is, it's in the middle of the second page there in her packet. I could see language going here to address adding a parliamentarian. This is under 139 in the ordinances. I have done some research on this today about qualifications and the types of individuals who are certified as parliamentarians. I think this needs more discussion so that we do it right. There are several qualified individuals across the country. The city council would need to think about whether this position would be a contract service and whether the job would be a job performed remotely. It says add, the director of internal audit shall have the ability to hire an outside auditing firm or legal counsel in the event he or she finds it necessary to seek outside advice for the effective administration of the work of the department. In the event that the director of the internal audit finds this necessary, he or she must make said request for funds to the city council. The line for contract services will be overseen by the city council. Similarly, in the event that the city council finds it necessary to contract with outside counsel due to a conflict the city solicitor has, the city council shall have a contract funds line available for outside legal services. Both such requests for funding of outside legal services shall only be approved by the city council after determining there is a conflict which necessitates the need for outside counsel. The approval of such expenditure requires a 2/3 vote of the full city council.
Yes, and this kind of speaks to some of what Councilor Jordan was bringing up at the last meeting where we had, he would have liked to have our own representation on the council. It's not necessarily the full representation on the council, but if there is conflict, I'm just saying it because I'm trying to understand it as we go. If there is conflict, there is an opportunity, and hopefully the mayor would agree, right, that there would be a line item where we can reach out to a separate entity that would allow for us to get another opinion. Councilor Jordan, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so basically in version A, there was nothing about this topic. In version B, I bring in the concept that we need part-time legal counsel to support the city council and the director of internal audit. Because as the two groups that are charged with checks and balances, they need to have legal support. Otherwise, they're going to be very much powerless to actually enforce their checks and balance authorities. So in compromise with proposal B, we now introduce proposal C. Proposal C would have it that the law department would maintain the current role of providing the legal counsel to the city council, but the city council would have a parliamentarian who would have the sole jurisdiction over the rules issues, which have plagued us with some, concerns. I'll just euphemistically call it all that. That the law department's weighing in on the internal affairs of the city council, and, we have all these conflicts relative to who the mayor picks the law department and involving in that. So now we would have a parliamentarian who would be charged with doing that. So we're gonna have to develop the language for the teeth of the parliamentarian role. And then where there are conflicts, between the council's powers, legislative power versus executive power, if there is a legitimate conflict, I don't believe it should be 2/3, I think it should be a majority, but, we need to write language in here that the city council shall be appropriated a fund, say $10,000 a year or something, where we have a fund where if we had to, retain counsel, independent, to represent the council's legislative powers and to do our duties, we should be able to do that. This body cannot properly function when the counselors have to pass the hat in order to actually do their jobs. Whereas the mayor gets unlimited free legal services to represent his position. So that's not fair, and that's not a correct system of government. This isn't anything new, this has been going on for years. Likewise with the director of internal audit, he or she needs to be able to, should have to have an appropriation line there that person in their sort of inspector general of Holyoke role has an ability to get the legal enforcement, to draft documents if they need, to do whatever legal support they need, because what if they're auditing the mayor? What if they're auditing something that the law department doesn't want them to audit? What if they're, they need that support if that's truly gonna have teeth? No different than the Inspector General of Massachusetts has their own independent, guidance. So these check and balance roles, they gotta have support or they're gonna be basically neutered and powerless. And so that's what this is capturing. So we gotta think this through, how we develop this language. And again, I appreciate the openness to go through these, and we just gotta think through the language together.
Thank you, Councilor Devine.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under Lisa's, I think it's Lisa's things, the last paragraph where it says, "The approval of such expenditure requires a 2/3 vote of the full city council." What if not? What if, who's,
It's an echo.
It's
oh, it's an echo, okay, I mean, who's talking?
It's okay.
I thought it was you. Full city council, what if there's only 10 of us here? Does that mean full city council present?
I mean, that is correct. I think that would be for the parliamentarian. That is a good question. I think unless we can ask to have that spelled out in the language for now, so that way we don't have that headache in the future. That could make sense that when they put the legal language together, that they incorporate whether it's the 2/3 of present or 2/3 of the full council.
Because you may have 10 one time and 12 another time, and so
Thank you for bringing that up. That's
probably the only thing I'm going to understand.
That's an important point, though. So, thank you for bringing Kev as well for breaking down some of that. Real quick, with regards to the parliamentarian piece, I do see it as it says phase 2, right? If we're saying phase 2, does that mean that's coming along with like all the other things that are in phase 2?
That's for phase 1 for me. So no phase 2 for Jordan on that. That's phase 1. This is critical to the operation.
The parliamentarian or the funds for the actual allocation of because those are two different things.
These ordinance changes, this has to be part of the package for me.
Okay, Rory. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I agree that, and I think that is exactly what Solicitor Ball is suggesting here, is that.
That's the echo.
No, I know, it is a little distracting.
It's totally distracting.
But this is exactly what Solicitor Ball, I'll just pause for a second. gets worked out.
It's coming from Jeffrey. What does that mean? Can Jeffrey mute himself?
There we go.
How about now? Excellent. All I was going to say is that Councilor Jordan is right in that the suggestion here is that this language be included as part of a phase one. I think what Solicitor Ball is referencing about specific language around a parliamentarian is that could, if that was the direction the council wanted to head in, that could certainly be discussed separate from this larger package, because that is something that is a very novel idea. Other municipalities do have parliamentarians, whether they're city employees or they're contracted. There is actually the New England Association of Parliamentarians where you can get somebody that will work with your municipality, learn your laws and rules inside and out, and then also Robert's rules and how they interact and be able to provide guidance to legislative bodies. All that aside, that is the conversation that could take place as part of a phase two. I do believe, and I believe the mayor, and this is something that's in the language here, is that the mayor would, with this budget, that would be starting on 7/1, because when we're breaking things out between a phase one and a phase two, it's what are those things that really are trying to be accomplished prior to the budget, and what are those things that can be talked about after the budget. The structure around a parliamentarian could take place once the budget is set, with the understanding that, to Councilor Jordan's point and to the language that Solicitor Ball is recommending here, that the mayor, who's here tonight and can address this if there's any questions, would be presenting a supplemental budget page to this council prior to your vote on this fiscal 26 budget that would have a contracted service line in the city council budget that the council would be able to appropriate and use and expend based on this language here. So if that was to contract with a parliamentarian, or that was to contract with, some other thing, some other entity to assist, that I think you have both the mayor and the solicitor's office agreeing to that. What language about the number of votes or who present, that's obviously up to this body, and that's not the role of anyone else outside of this chamber to decide. But I think what you have here in front of you is an agreement that, yes, we've heard loud and clear, and the points that have been raised are very well taken. And when because Councilor Jordan is right, the idea around this Director of Internal Audit is just that. And they need to be independent. And they need to have access to funds if there is conflict. They shouldn't be at the mercy. Otherwise, it would be a toothless position. And why even put it forward? So this is a good way to get there. And that could start on July 1 of fiscal 26 by adopting this language.
Awesome. Thank you. Councilor McGrath-Smith, and then I saw you, Ted.
It's more a question of process around how fast we can get, our current redlined draft modified with the recommendations here. It sounds like the group is willing to kind of approve that additional sentence that Jordan has requested for 156, and we've gone through another change that has been proposed by Jordan around adding appropriation to 3K on page 7. And a lot of the stuff in the packet from Lisa Ball, I think I'm not so sold on all of the need to necessarily remove all of the school department language, and I'd love them to look at it one more time around that language. But the other, pieces that are being suggested here look fine to me. The stuff that we have here around the parliamentarian and the 2 paragraphs below that, I think are really interesting ideas. But I would also need to see the real language in order to really know what does that mean and are we approving it? And so when do we do that?
So
Does that have to be another meeting or something that can be, we ask for the language to be given to us in legal form and it is shared with us to go to council? I think I'm in general support in support of those ideas, but we don't have the actual language in front of us.
My understanding is that we should have the language by Tuesday if everything gets voted through for today. So that way we have a whole week time before an actual full council comes together for everyone to have time to review the
Okay.
language.
All right.
And then I believe there was one more other thing. Oh, my bad, Councilor Murphy Rumboletti. You quiet over there. You're usually not that quiet.
I'm just, trying to take it all in. I just had a thought. I mean, I definitely want to make sure we do the parliamentarian thing right. I'm in favor of it. I've wanted one for a while. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think we would need to do a little research on what that would look like in the budget. But I do think that the third paragraph on Lisa's document on the second page about outside counsel and the 2/3 vote. I feel better with a 2/3 vote, and this is just my opinion, just because this is someone that is representing all of us as a body. And so I would hope that as many people as possible would agree to spend the limited amount of money that we have, but that is just my opinion that I wanted to throw out there. So
Thank you. And then this is a question that I have, I guess, maybe for the law department or any other counselor that knows. I do recall that we changed how when it was financial transfers, it had to be 2/3 vote. There was an ordinance that we changed not too long ago. So maybe a year and a half ago, no, there wasn't financial transfers. It did go through ordinance. And I remember I caught flack for going with the 2/3 side.
no, that was for changing an ordinance.
For changing an
You
ordinance.
guys changed
All right.
it to a
wasn't
2/3 vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. I still agree with that. But all right. With that being said, I know you, Councilor Jordan, you had mentioned about the proposed language of the mayor and CAFO and cannot agree on the matter. You kind of wanted to expand on that. You still on that, or?
Yeah, we should probably talk about that. And I would be interested in Tessa's perspective on it, but actually to Mike Bissonette's credit, he's the one that kind of brought this up in a conversation, which is we're kind of like on the collective bargaining in particular. There's a couple points here where, the mayor and CAFO are supposed to agree on the strategy. They're supposed to agree on the final product and that it's something the city can afford. So the question is, what happens when they don't? What happens when they don't agree? Because potentially that scenario could occur. Lisa takes a first stab at this, to her credit. She pretty much puts it in the city council president's bailiwick to kind of play Judge,
Mediator,
King Solomon with it. I don't
Your
know if we
analogies
want to
are
put
awesome.
the president in that position. Maybe we should have it be city council total, but I'd be interested in Tessa's perspective on that, to be sort of advise them. I was kind of thinking, it would probably have to be an executive session. I mean, this is going to be, I think, really rare. I would hope those two would work out any differences they had. But in the rare case where they didn't, maybe they could have an executive session with us, because it does relate to collective bargaining, and it would be one of the allowed executive session things where they could say, look, here's the pros, here's the cons of doing this. Where do you guys come down on this? That's where she's going with that paragraph, to kind of deal with that potential hypothetical scenario.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy Rumboletti.
Thank you, Councilor Jordan, for the question. Because I saw that. I feel like if this does happen, What I would imagine would probably make sense is like whoever the president is, whether or not it's me, is, they sort of, the concern gets presented to the president. And maybe it's like, if that situation can't be resolved, let's just bring it to the council through executive session. I would agree though, Councilor Jordan, that something like that should go through executive session. So like, if it can't be resolved and, if it can be,
Right.
obviously, I mean, let's just do that without bringing the whole body together. But if it can't be resolved, then we should have it go to the full council. Does that make sense?
Okay. That does. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
So, yeah, just kind of let's tweak it so it kind of does that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Attorney Bissonnette, I see your hand raised as well.
Sorry, I was muted. Just wondering if maybe a two-step process where the president serves sort of as a mediator. So it would be that if the parties can't agree, the city council president will meet with them and try to reach an agreement. If no agreement is reached, then the president shall convene an executive session.
I would love that change to be made whenever you guys are.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that sounds okay to me too as well. And again, Jeff, we're editing this as we go, right?
Okay, so are we taking specific language that is in the email?
No, so I think for that particular one, there is a specific language in the email where it says the CAF and the mayor agree to accept recommendation that the city council provided. If not, no, that's not the one. Where the president will review the matter, make a recommendation to both parties. But then there was some recommendations that just came up from Councilor Murphy Rumboletti, Councilor Jordan, and Attorney Bissonnette, and it's possibly incorporating some of that. And Attorney Bissonnette, I apologize. I didn't really get to hear exactly what you said. I got bits and pieces of it.
It was very similar to me.
Okay.
Can Mike write that up in like the rewrite that's going to happen for next week so
Yeah,
Jeff has
yeah.
that? Because I think Mike
That
had,
too. That's actually not in the copy on
Yeah.
screen. It was in Lisa's
In
email
Lisa's email, yep.
as an add-on, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't specifically specify where it should go.
Right.
We can make note of that.
Yeah.
Great.
I think we should put it probably up where J is, where it talks about the consent of both of them. That's probably like maybe make J a little longer. I don't know, I think it's K now actually, but that, I think, is in that in 292, 2-292.
Yep.
That is correct.
Hey, the EPA consent decree was easier to follow than these changes.
But it's my understanding that we can make that change and it can be included in that, right?
Yeah, I think to Councilor Jordan's point, if we just followed that, you've got J, K, and then L is CAFO fines after receiving such information. We could either put it in between or you could put it at the end. It could be item N of that section. If that's
I
easier,
would
Jeffrey,
put it
to
closer though to J, or that section K, because that's really the scenario that I think Lisa and Mike were originally pointing to. It's like, we're setting the strategy. What happens if there's an impasse? And if they don't agree on the collective bargaining and there's an impasse, like what do we do then? That's where I think it has to be right there.
So a new K. And I think Jeffrey's. putting
Yeah,
it
and
on
add to
screen.
K.
Yeah.
So, yeah. While Jeffrey does that, any other questions or anything up with any of the amendments that were sent forward with Lisa and
I had one.
edits? Go ahead, Kev.
Yeah, Lisa, I thought had.
Ooh, we losing you. Not losing you, but you're a little muffled.
Oh, I'm sorry. How about now?
You're good now.
Okay. Lisa had, I thought, a good suggestion, which was, do we want to take the opportunity now to rename personnel to human resources?
Kelly's nodding her head.
So,
Which
yeah.
what is?
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Kelly.
I don't know.
I was just saying, I think,
Kelly?
yeah, I agree. There's only like 2 personnel directors in Massachusetts that I know of,
And you're one of them?
and I'm one of them. I mean, sure, it doesn't matter what you call me.
No, we don't do that here.
I've been called a lot of things. So.
So we're making the edits in the document now, so that way it changes, or do we have? Okay, perfect,
I think that would make sense, yeah.
awesome. Thank you for that, Kev.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question.
You can call
In
me
this
Izzy.
language-
That Mr. Chair stuff is kind of like. Go ahead, Jeff.
Was there going to be language in this regarding it being going into executive session, or will the body just
Yes,
know to do that?
I believe so. That is the understanding.
Yes. Right?
We're kind of counting on Mike to put that rewrite in, that addition.
Correct.
When, in the final version that comes
Yeah.
out next week.
And that was my understanding, just if I may, from speaking with the solicitor earlier as well.
Okay, so we've
put
got
that-
this like an addendum to a placeholder to K right now.
Yes, correct.
Perfect.
Just add executive session right after in caps, and we could use that as a placeholder.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? So to be clear, we'll be entertaining a motion to approve with the amendments, or no? Well, go ahead, Rory.
I don't know if you guys are done, but I wanted, Councilor Jane brought something up and I wanted to address it.
No, go ahead.
And there is a small change that I would recommend. So this whole concept of the comptroller.
Yes.
And so, I know Councilor Jordan that this is a concern that's being brought up by another councilor, and certainly want to address it. You know, this is an integral role in order to achieve the concept of having a truly independent director of internal audit and combining treasurer collector. There's some functionality. There are some day-to-day things that still need to happen in order to make everything operate smoothly. That's where this comptroller piece comes into play. More importantly, though, you are absolutely right that this is not netting a new position. It's a new title. It is a new position with a new job description. But as far as additional full-time employees, there's no increase to the total number of full-time employees. None of us can say whether there are internal candidates or external candidates or anything else, because all these positions would be subject to hire. But the idea right now is that there would be no increase. This is not adding a new body per se, if that makes sense. It's not adding a new body, but it is adding a new position. Some of the other positions that we're talking about, the titles are changing, so the collector is becoming the treasurer collector, for example. There's some other title changes. We just talked about one right now, changing the personnel director to the director of human resources. But in this case, it is a new position, just like CAFA is a new position, but it's a very important role. The payroll functions, and Councilor Jordan, I know this is something that you and I have spoken a lot about, both outside and inside of this chamber. I really, and I think if I didn't mention it at the last meeting, appreciated the draft language you included, you and Councilor Vacan included, about really bringing a lot of that payroll workflow under one umbrella with all of the departments so that we don't run into issues that we all know have happened in the past. The comptroller is the one that would be ultimately responsible for that. So I just wanted to speak to the importance of the role itself, but there's an actual change that I'd like to recommend from the draft in front of us right now, and I'm trying to find it. It has to do with the qualifications of the comptroller, and right now it says the comptroller shall be a certified public accountant, meaning they have a CPA. I mentioned this to Councilor Jordan in passing, and I would just throw this out to the body. That's just one of many different types of certifications. I think that if we said, all the other things are absolutely true, and you want somebody with strong accounting experience, but what if somebody they're a certified government accountant, but not a certified public accountant, or they're a certified management accountant, but not a certified public accountant? I think I would recommend some language, which is in section B under that, where it says right now, the person appointed comptroller shall be a certified public accountant and have sufficient accounting experience and shall be a graduate, so on and so forth. I would say that the person appointed, shall obtain or hold accounting certifications, because there are like I said, there's a number of different types. CPA is just the one that gets thrown around a lot, just like Kleenex is Kleenex, but it's all tissue paper, right? CPA gets thrown around a lot to put somebody on a high standard, but it's a very specific type of accountant, and certainly one we would like to have, but maybe would be limiting ourselves. I just don't know what the committee thinks about that, but I wanted to recommend that.
So on my end, it totally makes sense, just because when we're going through the process of trying to hire and recruit, putting ourselves in a box with just a CPA will make it a lot harder to hire and recruit. But I'm also at the will of the body to make sure if everyone else is on the same page with regards to that. Councilor McGrath Smith.
I had a question.
Hold on. Oh, go ahead. You go first then, Kev.
Okay. So we're talking about comptroller, right? Not CAFO.
Right.
Yes, comptroller.
Okay. And so this is an accountant position. So just so I'm understanding, Rory, you would have a person who's not a CPA in that role? So what type of, they would just be what, like a master's in accounting with, can you go over what the substitute would be instead?
Yeah, sure. So a CPA is one type of certification. A CMA is a certified management accountant. It's a different type of certification. There's certified government accountants. In fact, there's a Massachusetts Association of Government Accountants under which you can become a certified government accountant. So my point wasn't to dilute the requirements, which I think is what you're trying to get to, and it makes total sense. It was just by saying that one specific type of certification may limit the pool of applicants. So I'm fully support requiring a certification. I just think that there are multiple types of certified accountants, not somebody that has a bachelor's in accounting and prepared taxes at H&R Block, for a few years. I understand that that's why you're perhaps putting this language in here. I'm just saying that it may be too limiting That's all.
Okay. So do you want to add these other, like CMA? I'm
Sure.
gonna have to research that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll ask her too. Like, what's reasonable? Like, to have someone really qualified but reasonable in that position for that kind of a certification. But I'm assuming either you've done that research, which is why you're raising it. Is that the case? Like, I don't know, what percentage of the people in this type of role for a city would have a CPA versus a CMA versus this other one that I'm not familiar with?
That a question for Rory?
Yeah, that's a question for Rory. I mean, I think the point you're making is CPA might be too limiting. So the question is, what percent of the people have CPA? And let's just say we added these other 2 certifications that you're suggesting. So it'd be one of the 3. Do you have any sense of what percent that might be one of these other ones?
There's also CGFM.
Yeah, I mean I think what we could do. So I don't just to answer your question.
Okay.
Simply is I don't know the percentage. What I can tell you is I am aware of people that hold similar positions in other municipalities that are not CPAs but are CMAs, for example. So,
Okay.
Just knowing that, right? That's more anecdotal, obviously, than anything else. And so then I did start doing some more research on those types, different types of accountants. And again, there are different types of accountants. So, and there's, international, or the institute, there's different types of associations that provide these types of certifications. So that's why I think that if we were to come up with some broad language that still helped us achieve the goal of hiring somebody with the highest level of accounting experience that would fit within this and have those certifications, we could name some of those. We could say, as certified by, X, Y, and Z, the International Institute of CPAs or the Institute of Management Accountants or the Massachusetts, and here's a great example. We want the treasurer collector to be certified by the Mass Treasurer Collectors Association. That's how you go get that certification. You have to go get it by taking their tests, taking their classes. If you have a CPA, you've gone, maybe you're getting that from a business school, maybe you're getting it from someone else, but it's a standardized test that is across the board. That's all. I think
just don't water it down where it's like some mail order
Exactly.
certification
Yes.
where you pay $50 and it's from the government of Swahili or something.
Yes. Yes.
If you make it to be the big ones, and then I'm on board with you
Yes.
on that. It's reasonable,
I thank you, and I agree, and that's exactly why I was hoping we could just broaden it a little bit, but still keep it very strong.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you for raising that point. And then Councilor McGrath Smith.
It addressed my concerns.
Nice.
Look at that.
So, again, we're moving, I'd entertain a motion to move, to accept the amended language that got brought in by City Solicitor Ball and Councilor Kevin Jordan to be put into legal language for next full council. And I would say by Tuesday, hopefully we can receive that to make sure that everyone has ample time to go over and review and make any other suggestions or any edits ahead of time before we get to full council. So can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Awesome. Item 4 is done. Entertain a motion to take up item 2. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 2 was filed by then Counselor McGee. Order that the position of Chief Administrator and Financial Officer be created and added to Schedule A. My understanding is that we are not able to actually fund, and I could be wrong, please correct me where I'm wrong, fund the item if it's not actually in the Schedule A. Or so the goal here is to try to get this done so that we can move it forward and start compartmentalizing things where they need to be so that when we create the budget, we're able to do things accordingly. So under discussion, anybody have any questions? Rory, go ahead.
Yeah, so in addition to it's part of item 2, because I know you guys can amend this. So there's 3 positions that would currently have to be put onto Schedule A. And that's the CAFO position, the treasurer collector position, and the comptroller position. And those would go to the CAFO in the optional budget that the mayor presented, which is in front of the council right now. If these other changes were to happen, the CAFO is at grade 17, GR 17. The comptroller is at GR 13, and the treasurer collector is at GR 14. And obviously, in all of those cases, the other ordinances that are already in place would have to be honored, namely that no one can be hired above the mid without, a special vote to allow for that. So right now, all of those positions in the budget are either at the mid or below, but those are the numbers in the budget right now. So we would just ask that this order be amended to include not just the CAFO, but include the other 2, so that if this were to move forward and the mayor's budget were to be adopted, that those positions could be funded and we could start posting and trying to hire and fill those roles.
All right, thank you. I see 2 hands raised. I'm going to go with Attorney Bissonnette. Bless you. Salud. I'm going to go with Attorney Bissonnette first, and then I got you, Councilor Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rory, just checking, are there positions that are switching grade levels that should be included in this ordinance change?
None that are switching grade levels. Some of the other changes that wouldn't be adding to the grades or changing the grades, but we would want to change the title of auditor to Director of Internal Audit. There is, let me see here. We didn't change, there's nothing in the assessor's office changing. I'm just going through the list that was presented.
Sure.
In the auditor's office, it was update the city auditor to the Director of Internal Audit, and update the professional, which is currently at grade 13, GR 13, and then update the professional accountant position to Assistant Director of Internal Audit, and that's GR 10. So no change in the grade, but just a change in the title. CAFO and Comptroller we already discussed. Procurement was staying the same, although I think there was some conversation about changing it to purchasing. But that's not been, I don't think we need to worry about that right now. Treasurer collector, that position would need to be updated to on the GR 14. And we're not doing the director of technical service. So that's off the table at this point, that there's nobody suggesting that move forward. That would be discussed at a future date.
So all those would be part of the amended order? Is that how you'd like to proceed?
That would be my suggestion to the committee.
Thank you. Let me recognize Councilor Jordan. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, generally speaking, when an order's filed and it says, create CAFO, create salary, create XYZ, that under what we've been advised in the past, I'll let Mike weigh in here, that from OML issues, like that's what your conversation is centered on. Generally, when we've had these type of things come up, you can't file an order that says, give the police chief a raise, and then when it gets to committee, oh yeah, by the way, let's add fire chief, add janitor, add forester, and do boom, 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 boom. We've been told that that's not legal. That if you want to do those things, you have to file an order to do those things and list out the positions that you want. So I would be comfortable, I would just give you that friendly piece of advice. I think you're fine if you want to go forward tonight with the guidance on CAFO, because that's what the order says. But I think you should file something for all these other positions that, you know, we're changing auditor to this and grade X and all these other amendments you're making. I think that should be put in an actual order.
Thank you, Councilor Jordan. And then Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti, I saw your hand raised. Or?
I guess I'm just, thank you. I feel like a lot of these, well, no, I mean, like these positions are mentioned in item 1. Well, and I mean 4 technically, but like item 1, these things are mentioned. So I think I would hope that the spirit of this is to just clean things up and put the items that were previously mentioned in, or that are listed in item 1. But that's, I guess I'm just a little confused, sorry.
Yeah, to Councilor Jordan's point and to Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti's point, this language, specifically like, you know, to add comptroller to Schedule A, those types of things, were included as part of the larger package, which is item 1. That's already in front of the committee, but since the bulk of that was taken up in item 4, my suggestion was just the cleanest way might be to amend item 2, but if it needs to be taking up item 1 and breaking those pieces out, I'm sure that could, you know, that could work.
Attorney Bissonette, you got a second? You got your hand raised, Meg? My bad. Let me recognize Meg, and then I got you, Attorney Bissonette. Go ahead, Meg.
I was also going to say that it's, you know, we need to have, it's all of this is an ordinance change. We're going to need 9 votes anyway. To suspend the rules and take final action is also 9 votes. There's nothing that prevents us from moving, you know, an order to council and on the night of the 17th, bringing it up. Knowing it has been discussed here. It is no surprise to anybody. And asking council to take final action on it. It's the same number of votes as it's going to take us to make any ordinance changes anyway.
Thank you. And then Attorney Bissonette, have you just, you paying, not to say that you're not paying attention, but like you got the gist of it, of what the situation is right now?
Councilor McGrath-Smith is absolutely right. It takes 9. It will take 9 to take it up on first reading, the first night it's on the agenda. And it'll take 9 to pass it. So as to the question of open meeting law and whether or not the public's been advised, and it really has almost like how close are the subject matters to each other so that it could have reasonably been expected by the public that this matter would come up in conjunction with the agenda items. So it's my view on amendments that if they're germane to whatever is under whatever order or piece of legislation is under consideration, then the amendment can be considered. If they're non-germane, then they're struck as non-germane. In this case, you'd have to take a fuller view of the agenda, because in and of itself, this is pretty tightly worded and was done with the sole intent of CAFO, filed before I think before the full financial department proposal was filed. So I don't see, the only drawback I see in waiting is that I know the council is preparing to go into summer schedule. And I know we'd like to get this in place for budgets as of July 1 and for new hires. So with that caveat, I would say you couldn't consider an amendment, but make sure the amendment language is posted on the council agenda, so it will be the original motion, the amended order. That would be my thought.
That helps a little bit. So, Councilor Jordan, go ahead.
If it helps, I think Mike's point is a good one, is, we are discussing all these broad ones, but I guess the only reason I was raising the issue is item 2, which is what you're talking about amending, pretty much only says create CAFO, create a salary for CAFO. It doesn't mention create salaries for all these other jobs, create all these other jobs. That was my only point. But he's absolutely right. We're talking about all this stuff. Maybe we make it as part of the 4th pack, item 4, these other ones. Again, nothing I'm going to raise, but I'm just pointing it out to you that technically the order just says that one job set a salary for that one job. And
So if I'm hearing it correctly,
I'm not going to make a big issue. I was just pointing that out. But I think in item 4, maybe, unless you want to use item 1, maybe something that's broad.
I'm just trying to figure out how to say it, where it's like, if we're saying we're making the amendment to item 2, but to fall in line with what was already decided in item 4.
Or you could reconsider item 1.
Reconsider item 4 and add in the language for.
Yes, so I'll make a motion to reconsider item 4 and to add language so that we can add the Schedule A changes, CAFO at grade 17, treasurer collector at grade 14, and comptroller at grade 13.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Awesome.
And thank you everyone for the flexibility on thinking that through.
And then for item 2, we're finishing that one up now because
Seems like 1 and 2 are just complied with, right, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
yes. So we take up 1 and 2 as a package and comply them? Or I want to table 1 and I believe 3 because 1 has something to do with charter and I would rather us take that up together later on if possible.
I think item 1 we're going to take up in charter and rules on the meeting next week. Because at this point, everything in here that's ordinance related has been shifted into version B, which is 4, which we've already addressed. And everything in here that's not that is charter. So we're taking this section up along with any of the legal docs that we have related to charter changes on the next charter meeting. So I actually think in this body, we could mark it as complied with. Okay. But let's table
Okay.
in case we need to take it up for whatever reason.
All right. And then we'll,
So I guess we're on 2 already, right?
yes.
So I think the motion then for item 2 is that it's been complied with. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then motion to take up item 1.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then the motion is for item 1 to be tabled.
All in favor?
Aye. That's it.
And then we have item 3, which I personally, because Linda's not here, I know Kevin's here, I would prefer tabling it because, but again, I'm at the will of the body too as well.
We can ask the maker of the order. Do they consider it complied with at this point?
Councilor Jordan, do you consider 3 complied with, or would you prefer for us to wait?
Let's see. City council established minimum eligibility requirements
I think we have.
to the appointment prior to the initial. Yeah, maybe, how about, let's just I would recommend just tabling that one, but if the final, that was the skinny down version, if you recall,
Yep.
if we didn't do the municipal modernization ordinance.
Yep, yep.
If that all ends up passing, this probably becomes moot. But if it doesn't, that's the theoretical bare bones minimum that we
Right,
have
right.
to do to meet the special act that was
That makes
voted in
sense.
by the public.
Awesome. So I'll entertain.
I would say table that one.
All right, I'll entertain a
See how it
motion.
all plays out.
Motion that item 3 is tabled. Second. Oh, I want to. Okay.
Make the motion.
Yeah, make the motion because I don't like making motions as the chair.
So motion to table item 3.
Turn on your microphone.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys. And before we adjourn, I want to say thank you to everyone involved. This has been a long and arduous process, and I have to say that as a body, we have been working together to make sure this happens. And in my 4 years, this is a pretty awesome experience. And thank you all. So now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Good night.